Sorry. Yeah, so hi, my name is Jason Ambrose. I am the director of The Punisher No Mercy. And well, I mean, my involvement with the project we can get into in maybe a minute or so, but maybe give my colleague a chance to introduce himself, as he was the producer and star, and also married to the costume designer. Basically, a man with many roles. Take it away, man.
You did most of the introduction for me there, Jason. Hey guys, hey everyone. I'm Shawn. Like Jason said, I produced Punisher No Mercy. I also co-wrote it with Davila LeBlanc. I also play the Punisher, and I did the fight choreography as well. I'm a Montreal-based actor, and yeah, that's about it.
Tell them where they may know you from, Shawn.
Well, I've done a bunch of stuff, film, TV. I'm mostly, I guess, I'm known for the work I've done. I've done a lot of work on Assassin's Creed, on all the Assassin's Creed games, all the way up to the most recent one. Deus Ex, I was in that as well. Outlast, a whole bunch of other games. And I've also done a bit of film and TV work, but television work, like stuff like Blue Mountain State and Bullet to the Face.
Yeah, I am a couple generations behind in my video gaming, but I am very much aware of that series. I know it's pretty popular.
It's a lot of fun, actually. It's really funny because Montreal is right now pretty hot in the sense of it's becoming really known for some really heavy-hitting platinum video games. Basically the design studios are becoming fairly well known. So I've been playing these games for years, and then I met Shawn and we collaborated on this project, and now I'm like replaying these games and essentially not looking at the credits and waiting to see if I can recognize where Shawn is speaking, because sometimes he'll be doing an accent or he'll play like a really weird character, and I'll be like, so it's really funny to I've gotten to know Shawn now and then go back and play his games and be like, oh, he's Anonymous X or whatever. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, and I think I really enjoyed the voiceover in No Mercy.
Oh, thank you.
What would you say inspired the look and feel of the short? Was there a specific writer, author, or artist?
Yeah, absolutely there was. The idea for me to do No Mercy came almost directly from Garth Ennis's run on the Punisher Max series. I read the Punisher Max series several years ago, and up until then I didn't really know. I mean, I knew the Punisher, but I wasn't a huge fan. I just knew he was some guy in a gray spandex suit with white gloves and white boots and a skull on his chest who kill bad guys. But the Punisher Max really let him come into his own, that series, because it was gritty, there was violence, there was language, sex, all the attributes of the world he needs to live in were there. There you go, Jason's a fan as well. So that thing literally became my Bible. I just completely fell in love with the character. He really came into his own, I thought. Ennis wrote him supremely well. And also the cover art from like one Jason just showed. The cover art for all the Max series, I think there were 60 issues, were done by Tim Bradstreet, who is an awesome artist and who portrays Frank in a very realistic way, I find. In his covers, Frank just looks like he's powerful, but he's a man, and in the comics he's 6'2", I think 225, 250 around there, which isn't impossible, but not a lot of people fit that mold. And when I saw the cover by Bradstreet, I really thought that that was something I could ballpark approach and play just based on the look. So the look, the feel, the dialogue, a lot of that was taken, not lifted from the pages directly, but inspired heavily. The lighting of the film was heavily influenced by Tim Bradstreet's art, and the feel, the writing, and the overall tone of the film was heavily influenced by the Punisher Max series.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of really great dramatic lighting in the short, and And what made you decide to include Elektra in the short?
I wish I had a really deep, like profound artistic reason for including her, but that actually came out of at the genesis of the project. It was essentially my friends and I in the combat crew had done a project previously, which was a bunch of sword fighting and spear fighting and martial arts up on the mountain. And it was just like a fun project that turned out really well for us and kind of turned itself into a short film. So we decided, let's do another one of those, but approach it in a much more professional manner. So actually have, pre-production and a storyboard and a location that's locked and an actual cast and a director of photography and an actual director and all that, and a script, all the essential elements of a film. And so as we were conceptualizing, what do we want to do, in the meantime, we kind of went ahead and started working out fights. And one of the fights we did was with my friend Amber, who plays Elektra. And we just came up with this huge fight that we really wanted to do, and eventually kind of found a niche with the Punisher-Elektra dynamic. When we decided we were going to do a Punisher film, we figured, oh my God, Amber would be a shoo-in for Elektra. She looks like her. She's a great actor. She'd be perfect for it. So basically, we designed the fight around that idea to have Punisher fight Elektra, and the story then kind of came after. We kind of went about it in a reverse direction. But the most important thing was we had to make sure that the story made sense and that she was there for a reason, that he fought her for a reason, that she was trying not to kill him for a reason, etc., etc. Because often in fan films, it's usually good enough for the people making them to just have two characters show up and just fight, which is awesome. I'm a huge fan of that. But we wanted to actually make a proper film with a narrative. So in order to do that, we had to really make sure the script supported those two characters meeting. But them meeting was kind of at the core of the idea of the film in the first place.
Yeah, and I do think that it makes sense within the context of the film. And something else that I noticed, that I could definitely tell that there seemed to be a specific attention to detail in their fighting styles, between Frank's fighting style as well as Elektra's, who's much more flashy and martial arts oriented, and Frank seemed a lot more like down to the basics.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I'm really flattered that you noticed that. Actually, that's awesome, because that's one of the intentions of putting the fight together in the first place. Is we wanted to have a narrative to the fight, have a story. Because often one of my complaints, and a lot of the people I work with, when we see film and television, is action tends to exist for the sake of action, and there's a beginning and then there's an end, and you don't really know what happened. It's just shaky cam and probably really good choreography at its core, but not treated properly through how it's filmed. So we wanted to have a definite narrative with both characters, have them be different, but have their own styles, and have a clear narrative when we film it, so that anyone who watched the film could then tell someone else, need to be like, what happens? Well, he shows up, she does this, she disarms him, he fights her, they go into the next room, etc. As opposed to there was a bunch of shaky cam and then someone fell down. And initially, actually, interestingly enough, when we first started conceptualizing the film, I actually was pushing for a more martial arts-oriented Frank Castle, because I don't fit the mold perfectly. I'm not huge and muscular, and I have a shaved head, and I don't quite fit the image of the character 100%. I thought we'd take him in a bit of a unique direction and have him be, younger, more agile, and that way I could capitalize on all my martial arts training. But the co-writer Dav, he wasn't too keen on the idea, and the other people I balanced it off thought that we should just scale it back to a more military hand-to-hand practical style, and I agreed that martial arts in that situation wouldn't have worked very well. So we gave him a very basic kind of military hand-to-hand gritty style, and we made her, like you said, much flashier with kicks and spins and stuff. And I think the contrast came out really well, and I'm really glad that you noticed that. Thank you.
Sure. And can you talk a little bit about how you brought Jason into the project, and then Jason, can you talk about what you brought, what you felt that you brought to the short, and what kind of direction you wanted to take with it?
Sure.
I'll hand this to Jason in a second, and if you don't mind, just to tell you how we met. A lot of this project's crew and cast were basically taken from the last project we did, but we needed more people. So I went to this site, it's a Montreal-based site on Facebook called Indie Filmmakers Montreal, where a lot of independent filmmakers go and post their services as, directors of photography, filmmakers, actors, sound recordists, all that stuff. So I put up a notice there, and we were looking at the time for an artistic director, because I figured that I would just direct the film, because I just didn't have anyone else to do it, and I wasn't keen on wearing that many hats, but I was already wearing so many. I figured, one more. But we put up an ad for an artistic director. Jason got in touch with me, and right off the bat, I was really struck by how professional he seemed, how articulate he was, and how experienced he seemed in what he was suggesting. And right away, I was like, my God, whether this guy works with us or not, I've got to mine him for all he's worth, because he knows all this stuff that I don't know in a field that I want to know more about. So we arranged to meet for coffee to discuss it further, and Jason, I'll let you take it from there.
That's a very gracious introduction. Essentially, I came across Shawn's project online, and I realized that he was a local as well. I had seen him somewhere before, maybe through video games or in a short film. I recognized him as someone working in the scene. I couldn't put my finger on it. Clearly, the fact that it was a Punisher project immediately piqued my interest. But to be brutally honest, up until that point, my work had been mostly doing drama, science fiction, kind of artsier stuff, or commercials and things like that. So when I saw that project, at first I was like, oh no, a fan film, and I kind of had some prejudices about it because it's a fairly new format, and there's everything from just really terrible, in the kitchen type of thing with your laptop to guys that either worked in the industry or should be working in the industry because they're delivering on that level of professionalism. So I was sort of skeptical, but there was something drawing me to the project, and I decided, what the hell, I need a change of pace. I love Punisher. I know the material. This guy seems to know what he's talking about, and let me sit down with him and see what he has to say. So, we met. We had, like a 30, 45-minute conversation, Shawn?
Something like that. Give me 2 seconds, so I'm getting a kind of... I'm sorry.
Actors. So, yeah, we had ourselves like a... Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah. So, yeah, we had ourselves like a very basic conversation, and I let Shawn do most of the talking. He started explaining to me his vision. I was sort of listening to him. I'm like, okay, this is a serious guy. He has mainly acting experience. He has motion capture experience. But it seemed like a lot of the crew that he had were mostly friends. People with talent and maybe even combat experience and things like that. But it seemed to me that he could really benefit from having an actual separate director, somebody driving this thing, so he could focus on fight choreography. He could focus on inhabiting the character, and so on. And so I just kind of said at the end of the conversation, I said, Shawn, I think you should let me direct this thing. And it was a bit bold, I think. It was a bit of a bold kind of question, but I really meant it. And I think Shawn maybe saw in my face that I wasn't like, trying to, be all like, oh, you should let me direct it. I think he saw in my face that I was just being really honest and straightforward, and he surprised me. He's like, okay. So from there, I got to meet the team. I was very reticent to say, okay, let's go into this full steam ahead. I said, Shawn, I want to meet your team. I want to make sure that they're okay with this, and that that we're going to have a good dynamic, and that we can work together. Shawn said, don't worry, they're my guys. They don't get to make any decisions. No, I'm just kidding. No, we basically got together. We met, and it was sort of clear to me at that point that either this was going to work. No matter what it was going to be, it was going to work. And from there on, it just took on levels. And then I brought in some people that I knew that I'd worked with before. And we kind of took this project, and I guess I want to say we elevated it, but I guess together we just brought it to a level that initially I don't think that was the goal. Initially, it was kind of a demo. I think, Shawn, that was really how it's supposed to work. It was kind of an action demo.
No, actually, it was always gonna be a film. It was always supposed to be, you know, a short film, a fan film, but a short film. But I think you can definitely say that you coming on board elevated the film, because I can tell you right now, with no shame, that had you not been on board, the people you put us in touch with, your wisdom, your expertise, your approach, even the things that I never, well, quotation marks, hired you for, because you didn't get paid a whole lot on this project. I think it was around $0 or something.
Double that.
Yeah, I'll double it. All the stuff you did above and beyond that, to me, all those things brought the film up. You know, up. Not that it was crappy beforehand, but it's just, you know.
It was just a different project.
It was a different. It just wasn't as fully realized before, and I think you helped bring it forward to a place where the reality of the film actually matched what was in my head from the get-go, and I don't think I would have gotten there without your help. Actually, I'm positive I wouldn't have gotten there without your help.
I'm also positive.
Good. We agree.
All right, and let me ask you, just out of curiosity, how much have you seen of the Punisher on film? Because I know there's been 3 official adaptations, and he's a popular character for other fan films, considering that he's just a guy with a lot of guns.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've said this before. I think we've had this discussion before. I think one of the things that works against Punisher as a character in adaptations in film, I think the reason maybe Marvel hasn't been able to sort of, you know, get the gist of it is because someone had to kind of blaze that trail of the serious, you know, almost R-rated superhero film first. Because Punisher, I mean, you just open it, and I can just see an exec or some kind of, you know, like Disney or Marvel person just open the comic and go like, Jesus, we can't do this. This is, we're not going to be able to sell this. This is R-rated 2 pages in, you know? Especially if you read the Ennis stuff, you know, I mean, there's a reason Preacher is taking this long. It's because a lot of that is also the same kind of Ennis, like to the jugular kind of stuff. And Punisher is also, I mean, think about it, Nathan. It's the quintessential action film trope. He essentially, apart from all this cool psychological stuff that Ennis and other guys have kind of built into him later on, initially is your classic Chuck Norris, Rambo, you know, Commando revenge story. You know, you killed my family, and now it's payback time. Except with Punisher, it's like now everybody pays forever until someone kills me, and possibly beyond that, I'll come back and punish people some more, right? So there's so many action films that use that trope, that use that stereotype of the, you know, I'm coming for you, that I think they didn't know really how to treat Punisher differently. And so we did see the 3 films. Do we have our favorites? I mean, Shawn, what's your favorite one?
Oh God, do I have to choose a favorite?
Which one aggravates you the least?
Well, I'd either have to say the Dolph Lundgren one, only because I don't remember it. I don't remember if it's a good movie or not. If not, I'd have to say, if this is eligible, Dirty Laundry, just because you know, it had at least Dirty Laundry took it seriously. I say none of the other movies did. The cardinal sin of the other movies. Again, this is accepting the Lundgren one because I just don't remember it. But it's an '80s film, so it's probably, you know, guilty of some of these things. But I'd say the cardinal sin is no one wants to take a risk with Punisher. The risk being to give him his due and make him serious, you know. And whenever formula applies itself to these things, and you see it all the time in superhero movies today with grim or dark characters. They think, wow, people need to relate to him, so let's give him a love interest, and maybe a kid can, teach him the value of human life, and, all this garbage that has nothing to do with the character. That's not why people read the comic book. They read the comic book because Frank Castle's awesome, right? And
I totally agree. There's an insecurity about the material, the source material being able to sell.
To sustain itself, right? So they think, well, we can't just do the comic, we need to make it like every other film. And so you'll either make it campy, which is the where Warzone failed. They just went super camp with it, free running Jamaican crews fighting Punisher and, hanging from a chandelier doing spins. I mean, that's if you look at the Max series, it's silly compared to that stuff, So I think as long as they keep doing that and they don't treat it seriously, it's just not going to work, right? Because the character doesn't lend itself to that. So I'd say, my favorite, I guess, would have to be Dirty Laundry because it's closer to what I envision what the Punisher should be like. But if I had to pick from the movies, I don't know. I guess. The 2004 one, whatever it was called, Thomas Jane. Again, because I think he's the most fitting casting.
Well, Thomas Jane clearly, really inhabited that character. In terms of the public, he is the chosen one.
I'd love to see him take another shot at it, but with someone who really takes the character seriously, and especially with a really good script that supports him.
As always, that's a good starting point.
That's what makes or breaks any film.
I personally want to just add, and I know I get laughter and smiles when I say this, but the Dolph Lundgren Punisher film, I'm incredibly fond of it. I'm very, very, very fond of it because I have a sincere belief that that film was ahead of its time, and had it not been for, shall we say, limited budget, kind of very shoddy casting, again, because of limited budget. It's mostly a host of no-name sort of, guys that usually would be like the people playing extras in like a Law and Order episode in the jail cell, going like, "Let me out!" Like these guys were given like major supporting roles, so very poorly cast, and the story got a little convoluted, but it was almost there. That film got a lot more things right than Warzone and the Thomas Jane film. Particularly, and I'm going to stop ranting now, the one thing that really, really got to me on the Thomas Jane film, I was like, what the hell is this, is the fact that it was set in, like, the Keys, if I remember correctly.
Yeah,
right?
Florida. It was in Florida.
And I was just like, or Miami or something, and I'm just like, what the hell? What am I watching? Is this like Far Cry, the movie? What the hell is this? It has nothing to do with, like, New York is, or at least that sort of, even Chicago, any big city would have been, you need it to be urban, you need it to be
gritty and slummy and a little...
You need the crime, you need the idea, like they did in Judge Dredd, you need to establish clearly that it's a battle that, like, there's never going to be a shortage of people for Frank Castle to, wipe off the soil, because it adds that gravitas, it adds that weight to the whole story. End of rant.
Yeah, I do give the Dolph Lundgren Punisher credit. Like my thoughts on it is it felt like a good kind of cheesy. It felt more like a '70s generic action film. Like it was good looking at it from that perspective, even though it wasn't really much of a Punisher film specifically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like the voiceover stuff was pretty good, as I recall.
And I also remember that they, for whatever reason, they decided to show him naked several times.
Right. Yeah, I mean that's kind of a little bit weird, and but I don't know.
One other thing, now that Marvel does have the rights back for the Punisher, and as well as Daredevil, which I'm guessing would also include Elektra, who do you think deserves a film of their own again, or even like a series, Elektra or the Punisher? I should say which one deserves another shot first, because I think they both deserve their own shot.
I think definitely Punisher would make a tremendous TV show. You could handle it like, Dexter, that kind of grind, Breaking Bad, that kind of, these shows are breaking ground to like allow for a bit more graphic violence, and because that's kind of part of his world, the violence. But I think you could definitely have a police drama type of HBO or AMC even kind of show with the Punisher, going out and punishing pretty much. I think Elektra would be a bit of a harder sell because she's not as well known, and which is unfortunate. She's often, like you said, with Daredevil.
She's a good supporting character when you really think about it.
Yeah, but I think if Elektra was firmly established in, say, a Daredevil series, it'd be inevitable that she would get a spin-off, for example. If she tested well with the audiences and there was a demand for her and all that. And I think maybe that's the problem with the Punisher as films, is they try to cover too much. Like I say, if you want to tell, Frank's origin and who he is and see some growth and have the character elements that don't work in movies because they take up too much time and space and don't allow for him to do what we love him doing, you could have that in a TV show. I think you're going to do a film about Punisher. It could still work, but you'd have to do it like Dredd. I think Dredd was a really good example. They don't spend any time telling you who this guy is, about what he's feeling, or what. Not that emotions are bad, but they
also Dredd doesn't feel.
No, but you're not there to see Dredd fall in love. You're there to see Dredd shoot people in the face, right? So and that's what he does for 2 hours. So it's amazing. Like, it's a great movie. I love that film, and I think you could do the same thing with Punisher. The problem is that Dredd, as great a film as it is, didn't do super well commercially because it wasn't well advertised and had a bit of a more niche market where the fans really loved it. And fans of the genre, like, I don't know Dredd that well, but I'm a fan of the genre of comic book movies. I loved it too. And then you have a film, but it didn't make a whole lot of money, so people are trying to circulate petitions online to get them to make a sequel. Whereas Man of Steel critically didn't do that well, but made a huge ton of money. So they're already talking sequels and franchise, because that's where they're going to make their.
It's a tentpole film, yeah.
So I think if Punisher wants a chance, I think to be done properly, it should be on television.
I mean, Nathan, you must have heard that Netflix and Marvel just struck a deal not too long ago.
Yeah, there's like the 4 series, and then it all culminates in a miniseries of the Defenders.
Defenders or something like that, yeah.
Because those characters have almost nothing to do with the Defenders. Aren't the Defenders like Namor, Hulk, Doctor Strange, and the Silver Surfer?
Yeah, I believe they're just using the name, and they're creating a new Defenders based on these. I guess they're referred to as kind of like street-level superheroes.
Yeah, but they're talking about Marvel Knights. They're going to name the Marvel Knights the Defenders, in essence. Because Marvel Knights, Daredevil, Punisher, all that gang, all the New York street-level. Iron Fist, Power Man, Luke Cage.
Just to answer your question, Nathan, I think that whatever Marvel does or does not do with the Netflix situation, I think it unanimously all fans know deep down, especially now that Affleck has moved on to Batman, Daredevil needs another shot and needs like a good one. And at this point, Batman has been canvassed in terms of feel and look and style. So I think Daredevil absolutely needs to happen. Punisher, of course, needs to happen. But I think Marvel will probably be more cautious now because there's been 3 kind of poopy films about it. We'll say 2, just to be clear, and Warzone being absolutely the absolute worst of the lot, despite genius casting of Ray Stevenson.
Potentially genius casting, but that didn't work out too well, though.
Yeah, no, it was just dead in the water. I mean, it was shot here in Montreal.
Fully worked. I auditioned for Ink.
Oh, there you go.
I auditioned for that part.
So it was the Warzone was like a farce. I mean, they had Dominic, what's his name, Dominic West, for Christ's sake, like from The Wire and from Rome. I mean, with a cast like a guy who's ready to, yeah. Anyway, all this to say is, yeah, I'd like to see Punisher, Daredevil, definitely.
All right, and I also wanted to bring up something that it's kind of gone away a little bit out of the public eye, but right around the time you were getting ready to release your Punisher short, there was another Punisher short by Mike Pecky, The Dead Can't Be Distracted,
Yes.
that was given a cease and desist by Marvel. So where were you in your production whenever that happened, and whenever you saw that, what did you think? Were you worried about your production at all?
Jason, do you remember where we were?
I remember specifically when I came across it. I don't remember if someone sent me the link or if I came across it somehow, but it was somewhere in the middle of summer, beginning of summer, mid-summer, just this past summer here. And Shawn and I were sort of trying to establish the release schedule, and
we were in post, right? We were editing.
Yeah, we were in post. We were figuring out what needed to be done and what was the release date. Shortly after, we were going to release actually earlier, but we got picked up by the Montreal Comic-Con, who very graciously offered us to launch the film from their main event at Comic-Con, and so we held back the release date until, was it September, right? Or was it August?
It was September.
It was September, yeah. So yes, I did come across it, and I remember either saying it to Shawn or Shawn found it on his own, and then we had discussions about it.
For my part, I'll tell you, I was terrified when I found out. Everything had been going great. The movie was looking good. We had people working really hard. Everyone was going above and beyond the Call of Duty, and I was super excited about where the film was going and excited to release it. And the slightly paranoid concern I had throughout the entire process was, what the hell? What if Marvel gives us a cease and desist? And I was like, no, it doesn't happen. I've seen dozens and dozens of fan films, hundreds of fan films online. None of them get slapped with cease and desists. Kickstarter campaigns that get overly ambitious. Oh, we want to do Final Fantasy for 100,000. That kind of stuff I heard about getting shut down, which I understand. And also, because it wasn't a DC project, I'd heard of DC interfering with the world's finest people. And Batman Dead End, was it Dead End?
It's Warner Brothers.
One of the Alley. They had messed with those guys and pretty much vetoed their attempts to do something. But then because this was Marvel, I figured, Marvel seems to be more relaxed than DC with this stuff. But then they got bought over by Disney, which also made me a bit more nervous, because I'm like, oh, Disney does not mess around when it comes, and they're so big and they're so powerful and so pervasive. And then I heard about Mike Pecky's film being made, and I was excited to see it. I thought the timing was a little, how could I put this, that I was a little worried that if that film came out at the same time as ours, it would just overshadow ours, because he has such tremendous reach and clout and resources compared to us. And then, boom, I heard through a friend online that they had been slapped with a cease and desist. And I was positive that, that was the new law of the land when it came to Marvel and Disney's properties. So I was convinced that we were going to get slapped with a cease and desist and not be able to release our film, or that we would release the film and have a few days or weeks run and then get hit with a cease and desist. And to complicate matters further, when we initially uploaded the film privately to a private channel on YouTube, password protected, just for Jason and I to watch some of the music in the film, copyright flags started going up. Turns out it was because of the music we were using, not because of the film. But that, combined with what happened to Mike Pecky, I was a bit of a wreck for a while, and Jason did his best to reassure me. And then someone online pointed out that Pecky's film was actually lifting a story right out of the Greg Rucka run. The characters, the storyline, as far as I know, were taken directly from the comic. And people signaled that was probably one of the reasons why they were maybe getting into troubles, because of the intellectual property, not just of the character, but of the story. That people want to keep stories if it's there, so they can option them for films or develop stuff later on.
Well, if I may just jump in there, sure. Actually, I know for a fact that Pesci did get
Yeah, Greg Rucka is approval.
We're all on board, but
no, I'm aware of that, but
right.
You know, it's still possible that maybe their bosses are like, look, we understand.
They don't own the work. That's the thing. The work is not theirs. If you know anything about
that's it.
A lot of these writers and artists are literally at the bottom of the tent pole.
Exactly. So I figured whether they're on board or not, like that's even scarier. That the owners, the creators could be on board for this project, but the higher ups would say it's not going to happen. You know. But once I kind of stopped and realized, okay, but we have an original story. The only characters we're taking from DC are Punisher and Elektra, and a lot of people are saying, look, you know. You guys will be fine. You're just using the characters. You know, it shouldn't be a problem because it's a fan film and it's clearly identified. And so, as such, I wanted to make sure that, you know, I think there's 3 disclaimers in the film that we don't own the rights. That it's just a fan film. It's only for entertainment purposes, and it's completely not for profit. I wanted to just make sure that we didn't take any chances. And I'm very pleasantly surprised to say that we didn't. So far, get slapped with any cease and desist, and I don't think that's going to happen at this point. And Jason brought up a really good point where it may have been a bit inadvertent, but some of the choices we made in the film tend to distance the character from the more mainstream interpretations of him in the comics and in film. So I don't think it was as competitive with already established Punisher stuff because, you know, our Punisher's bald, for example, and he's original, and you know, there's other things that kind of deviate from the norm, which makes it more of an indie standalone thing. And I think Jason's right. I think that did actually probably help us out to an extent.
I would like to say personally, I was never worried, and I know that sounds incredibly arrogant and self-assured. I wasn't never worried. Was there a concern? Of course there was. I knew the minute we were getting into a fan film. That's just to give a totally legitimate concern, you know. But I think for me, in a kind of perverted way, it added to the excitement of doing it. I mean, there was a bunch of ways that this film was kind of messing, you know, sort of, you know, flirting with disaster. I mean, for instance, it's called No Mercy, right?
Yeah, that too.
As you may or may not know, Nathan, that it was the name of an ill-fated Punisher video game. That was also like hugely controversial for being extremely graphic and things like that. So there was that association there that was already kind of inviting trouble. There are a variety of other things too that about the film that could have very easily been. I mean, we could have very easily been slapped with a cease and desist as well. But I think Shawn is right. I think we made some stylistic choices. Not that we're like, Shawn, let's make a bald Punisher. Like that was not. That was not a decision that it doesn't go down like that. It was, listen, we have this story. Shawn's like, I have this project. I have the people to put it together. I have the resources, and you can come in and you bring in resources, and together we can make this thing. And the fact is, like, I want to do this because I feel that you know, I can do this. I can inhabit this character. And at the time, I didn't know Shawn very well. I think one of the first things I said was, you don't look a lot like the traditional Punisher. You realize that's going to be a sore spot for the fans. And he said, yeah, sure, but he's like, you know, I think once you see what I'm doing with him, you'll understand. And something like one rehearsal later, I was like, okay. At that point, Shawn could have sprouted, you know, wings or, you know, had a club foot or whatever. I was like, I don't care. I mean, I as a filmmaker, I love to see that. I love to see someone go, listen, I may not look like the character, but watch this, you know? And he totally sold me. More than 3 Hollywood actors that looked the part, Thomas Jane, of course, being somewhat of an exception because he did it great. But, I mean, here were all these guys that looked the part, and I felt that Shawn's performance was up there, if not exceeded that level.
And then, is there anything else that you guys are working on now that you'd like to talk about?
Well, I hesitate to tease. We are definitely going to work again. There's no question. You know, the fact is that we did this for fun. Shawn wanted to get this out of his system, but at the same time, Shawn has confided in me several times and told me, Jason, I am never happier than when I'm on a set doing martial arts choreographies. He's like, that is absolutely like, he's like, I act, I do all these amazing things, but that this is literally one of the things I enjoy the most. And I said, well, you know, that's great because I have a couple of ideas that we could work on, and so we're talking, and there is a project right now. Again, a very special irony about it because it's like the minute we started talking about it, we found out that Marvel is working on something with that same character. I mean, I'm not going to give it away, but we are thinking of doing another fan film, not Punisher related. I think we've covered that territory. We may come back to it one day, but we want to do another one and do it a little bit differently this time. I would be writing it possibly this time instead of Dav and Shawn. But we're going to sort of switch roles and see what happens. We'll definitely keep you updated, but you will hear from us again.
Yeah, that's great. I'm looking forward to it. And then to close us out, so it's something that I ask everybody that I have on my site. What is your favorite superhero movie? Why don't you go ahead and start, Shawn?
I'd have to say, without a doubt, my favorite superhero movie to date would be The Avengers. That movie satisfied me in so many ways that I did not expect from such a risky endeavor. And by risk, I mean that, you know, instead of just sticking to some kind of standard formula or diluting things to make it more accessible, I thought Joss Whedon did a fantastic job of just kind of taking all these characters we loved and letting us see them do what they do for 2 hours, which is all I ever wanted from a superhero movie. I just want to see the guys off the comic book page do what they do there on the big screen. So I'd say Avengers was definitely my favorite. Very, very, very closely followed by Dredd as well, because I thought Dredd was tremendous.
It's a bit difficult. I mean, asking a filmmaker which his favorite film is you know, wow. You know, it's a can of worms. I'll tell you what I think. One of the couple of films that have had a huge impact on me, I think the first Iron Man film were really, really, really special. I think as much as I think the first X-Men film and the first Iron Man film were, for me, the two landmark superhero films out there. Sure, you can pick them apart. You can say, "Oh, this was wrong. This wasn't quite right." In the case of the Iron Man film, I think it's genius. Apart from, of course, casting the real life Tony Stark, minus the inventing, right? Robert Downey Jr. I mean, it's just like I feel bad for the next guy that's going to have to walk around in the suit. Jeez. Let me just put it that way. He's got them by the balls, and there's a reason that they're paying him $100 million a picture or something ridiculous like that. But I think the way that film was brilliant is because Iron Man's origin story was never any good. I should say it was never really cemented. I read Iron Man. Iron Man was one of the first comics I read as a kid, and it was always kind of all over the place, and it had this pseudo, you know, a Chinese invasion, communist, you know, fear of the yellow fear kind of situation, and it was never like it always rehashed. It only got really interesting by the time that they decided that Tony Stark was a drunk, and then Stain was trying to muscle in on him, and then the Armor Wars and all this other stuff. So the fact that this film kind of rejuvenated and gave him an actual storyline that people can get behind now, and he's like an iconic, you know, he's the Avenger that he's supposed to be. I think that was a huge success. And then secondary, like X-Men, I think everyone agrees, maybe even you, Shawn, I don't know, Nathan, but I think it legitimized superhero films as it can be done somewhere. There's a place between serious and fantasy comic book where these characters can inhabit, and it can be graphic, it can be mature. I think it literally just like created this space in between those two worlds and paved the way.
I'd like to add that prior to Avengers dethroning it, X2 was my favorite superhero film. I think that's and I think you're right. They're at the genesis of like superheroes coming back, their films coming back to the mainstream, and kind of Hollywood proving with select films that it is possible to make good films out of comic books. Whereas, video games, for example, are still struggling to show the world, oh, you can make good movies out of video games. Like, we've yet to see a really good movie based on a video game. I can't think of one, actually. But yes, I think those are at the genesis of it, absolutely.
Yeah, I agree. Those cover a lot of my favorites as well.
What's your favorite one? I'm just curious.
Yeah.
My favorite would be the Avengers.
My man.
Or for
the X-Men and Iron Man. Those are all in my top 5 as well.
Yeah.
All right, but I'd like to thank you both for joining me on here today. It was great getting to talk to you about your fan film, and I really enjoyed watching it as well.
Thanks so much, Nathan.
Thank you, Nathan. Really appreciate you reaching out to us, and whether you loved it or hated it, for us, the fact that people watched it, that's what matters, and we just wanted to give something to the fans.
And thanks for the pertinent questions, man. They were nice and original.
Yeah, good interview, man.
Cover the usual ground most people tend to hit with interviews. So thanks, man.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you again for joining me here and on this episode of Superhero Shorts.